Hello and welcome back to Marineford TCG. My name is Joe. Drink of the day is a cold can of Red Bull, and I've finally had enough time to sort of get a decent idea of OP14 and EBO4. Much more time with OP14, of course, because EBO4 is still only on the dev build. If you haven't got the dev build and you want to give the EBO4 card a try, jump in Batsu's Discord. There's a link in the dev sim channel, shockingly enough, for where you can download the dev build. And I'll put a link to Batsu's Discord in the description or the comments. He'll be somewhere. But now that I've had a chance to at least test as or into a lot of the new leaders and a lot of the EBO4 buffed leaders, I figured let's put together a tier list of sort of my initial thoughts going into this meta. And then once maybe in a few weeks or so, once the set's been out and we start getting some data from the West, because all these EBO4 cards, they're all brand new to us, which is really exciting. But it does make sort of nailing down the meta just a little bit harder. So this is going to be mostly initial thoughts based on what little games I have played. Obviously Japanese data and just some intuition as well. And let's start off by placing all of the new leaders. Why not? That'll be fun. We'll go OP14. Because we did get 7 leaders this time, which is quite exciting. And I think there's sort of a clear sort of distinction between the best and not the best. I do think Boa is the best deck in the game right now. And I suppose I'll fill in the rest of the best decks before we go any further, actually. Because then we can sort of discuss most of the tier list in sort of with respect to what I think are the top decks. I think that makes sense to me anyway. Where are they? We're going to have an Emu. What a shocker. We're going to have an Ace. We're going to have a Mihawk. And this one might be a little bit more controversial, but I also think Bonnie is up there. And the order that I've got them in is this. And starting off with Boa, I think Boa is an extremely explosive deck. When you get the right triggers at the right time, the deck is like bonkers. Sometimes when you don't hit triggers, it can feel a bit rough, but you've got good ways to set up triggers, right? The 4-cost Boa into the 6-cost Kuma is an absolute classic because your 6-cost Kuma, you know the stack, right, from the 4-cost Boa. So as long as your Boa sees a trigger card in that top 3 peak, you can just put that into your life with the Kuma, which gives you a reliable trigger, and especially if it's Gorgon Sisters, you're going crazy from there. The 9-cost Boa is also just a bonkers card, and having access to FEMA, which has always been an insane unblockable card. We've just not really had a great deck for it since Doflamingo fell off. But now that we've got this Boa deck, FEMA's crazy. 9-cost Boa just forcing the burn and giving you a life is crazy. Like I said, it's like Big Mum, right? But the fact that it only costs 9, and the fact that it also has a trigger to play out a character, is wild. Boa also has access to great counter events. Both the new You'll Frighten Me and also Slave Arrow offer equally powerful but different effects. Slave Arrow just giving you a bunch of raw counter, being able to pick up things like Hiyori, Grandma Gloriosa, and even just some of your 4-drops like Ran to be extra counter. Or you've got You'll Frighten Me, which can just turn off one of their biggest attackers, and being able to play around both and either knowing or guessing what one your opponent has can make it quite tricky to play into Boa. I think into Emu and Ace, Boa is very playable into both. Into Ace, burning their life and then going, okay, pudding FEMA is in fact a sure way to victory. Finding pudding can be easier said than done though, so if you don't find the pudding, the Ace matchup can be a little bit more tricky, but it's absolutely winnable. You're going to burn all their life, they're going to lose a bunch of card draw from not getting their leader effect, and the fact that you also have options like the 6-cost Rayleigh that can help you deal with Marcos and Josus to keep their board clear, to stop them running you out of the game, is really nice. Emu feels, at least to me at this early stage, quite dice dependent. I feel like whoever goes second does have a strong, like, they're quite favoured in this matchup. Ground Death, being able to turn off your blockers towards the end of the game, can make you quite vulnerable to the 10-cost Elders, and you really don't have a lot of defense at that end game. So you're going to need to burn them as quickly as possible. And without the 5-cost Nami, that can be a little bit more tricky than when we get that card. But I think just on raw stats, you're going to burn a bunch of Emu's lives. You've got the Boa blocker that can force the issue. And obviously the 9-cost Boa is still insane. And FEMA is just an all-star in this matchup. Because a lot of the time you will get them to 0. They're obviously going to play a bunch of blockers. And having FEMA just as a really good option to blast through and get the win, especially when you put it on that 9-cost Boa, that can actually overcome however many events they've stacked up in their hand. Especially if you've got a pudding. But even without pudding, 20 unblockable is quite large. Who would have thought? I do think this deck has weaker matchups into some of the healing-based decks, especially. And one deck that is relevant to talk about with this is Blue Yellow Nami. This deck's currently waiting for a few things from EBO3. I guess we can place her now. I think in this format, she's still solid. I think Nami is a solid deck. But without the 5-cost Nami and without the 7-cost Robin, your curve is significantly weaker. You're stuck playing things like Kuma, who is undoubtedly worse than the Robin, especially in the Emu matchup. But in all matchups, pretty much, the Kuma is worse than Robin. Doesn't proc your leader effect, worse stat line, doesn't have the insane on KO, only a pretty good on KO. What a problem to have. But yeah, without those cards, I think Nami is a bit weaker. And as a result, but that is like Boa's worst matchup. A deck that can just go to 7 and heal, that's really tough to deal with. Fortunately for Boa, I think most of the other yellow decks are not that great at the minute. I think she is the best yellow deck by quite some way. So for that reason, I do think Boa is the best deck in the game. I don't think she really has that many truly bad matchups. Everything is very, very playable, especially if you win dice. Emu, who's gained Ground Death, that's about the only new card, but he's also gained matchups that aren't just free. This meta, I mean, OP13 meta was just Emu and Ace. Like, there was nothing really that could compete with both of these. And now we've got decks like Boa and Mihawk that absolutely can compete with both of these. Going back to Emu, the addition of Ground Death gives you way more like big counter events, and also makes your lethal, certainly in Mirror, it's a lot more interesting, because you negate War when you go for lethal, which denies them a block and a draw, which is very significant. But into every deck, pretty much, is playing some semblance of thing that you want to negate. Boa's got the 4-cost Boa, who you can negate and go for game. Ace has Marco, denying that guy from blocking is crazy. Even Mihawk and Bonnie, you can use your Ground Death to interact with their anti-removal pieces, like the Tashigi or a 3-cost Tashigi, and then use Marcus Mars. And it is quite expensive, but if it gets rid of the threat that you need it to, it can be worth it. Emu hasn't changed that much. It really is just that one new card. But the addition of, like we talked about with the Boa, a matchup that's absolutely losable. And I think Mihawk is actually quite a difficult matchup. Especially if they see their perfect curve. We'll get more onto Mihawk in a minute. But 7-cost Shanks into 9-cost Mihawk into 9-cost Mihawk or 10-cost Lorpo makes your matchup very, very difficult. Because all your stuff is weaker. They're potentially at 7k from Lorpo. And one of your guys gets denied from either blocking or attacking with the 9-cost Mihawk. The Shanks resting things and the Mihawk stopping things from resting. It's like a chaotic combo of really just kind of stopping your aggression quite significantly. Like, you're not going to get to block with War, so you're going to lose draws. They can potentially even take out Peter, which is really bad, because if you lose Peter and there's Shanks on the board, you're swinging at 4k, man. It's bleak. It's bleak. However, and we'll jump over to Mihawk now, you can still absolutely win, because Mihawk, if you can draw like a god, Mihawk's like up here. Mihawk's like the best deck in the game when you draw really well. But only one Searcher in Perona, and not that much redundancy, I think makes this guy a little bit weaker. There is the Supernova build that a lot of people like to play, that plays things like the 6-cost Law, 5-cost Bonnie, and that does give you better access to Lorpo, as well as some different counter events. But the fact that your Shanks is only really searchable off that 1-cost Perona, I don't think the 2-cost East Blue Nami Searcher build is that great, personally, because it's only searching Shanks. The 9-cost Mihawk, some people have been cutting it. I don't know, I really like the card. Like, when that guy sticks, it's so good. You get to deny resting over and over and over again, and you get to thin out your bricks, which can sometimes be an issue with this. So I am a fan of the 9-cost Shanks. And I do think Mihawk's incredibly powerful. I just worry for his consistency sometimes. But you can absolutely compete with all of these top decks on your day. Ace, there's been a few different innovations in Ace lists. I guess we can pull a couple of them up. We've got technology here. Shout out Kadi Kozoku for this deck builder, by the way. Yeah, this, and not this. This Ace Sabo Luffy is a 2k that's been creeping into Ace. Gives you a bit of power down, which can help you interact with Mihawk's board a lot easier. If you can sort of attack into their Shanks, their 9-cost Mihawk, and clear it with your guys, I think that's pretty good, right? So this Ace Sabo Luffy has been creeping in. And the same with Round Table. And these aren't obviously just good into Mihawk. You can obviously play this very well in a mirror. Opponent blocks with their Whitebeard. It kind of turns your searchers into swingers, into like a Whitebeard, right? So it's kind of like a Red Rock. Not quite as good as a Red Rock, but pretty strong, the round table. And obviously searchable off Garp, this one. Whereas the ASL is just a 2k, which is nice. We've seen these. We've also seen Doflamingo creep into lists. This guy. This Doflamingo, we saw him in some lists. I'm not seeing this as much anymore. But it's another card that's great for bouncing the 7 cost Shanks, excuse me. It's also great for winning Jozu wars because it bounces Jozu and can't be bounced by Jozu. What a treat. Into Boa, once the Kuma's buff wears off, you can bounce him, you can bounce the blocker Boa. It's just a solid card. Although you do generally see Jozu preferred because Ace plays so many searchers, you always have something to bounce. Other than that, Ace hasn't changed that much. He hasn't actually really gained anything from the new set. It's really just a couple of older cards, specifically power down stuff, and that big Dofi, that have come into Ace to sort of adapt to the meta. And that is one of the nice things about this deck, because it's so generic in what it wants to do. There's no leader locking. There's no, you can only play this type of card. You can only play that type of card. You gain value from everything, which really lets you tech for the meta. I do think, again, some of the new decks can be tricky. Mihawk matchup, Boa matchup, both winnable and losable. But just the raw consistency that Ace offers in the amount of draws you get, the fact that you'll never bricked up because of this leader effect, I think he's just one of the best decks in the game just because of his consistency. Next in top tier, I've actually got Bonnie, and I think Bonnie is a bit of a sleeper. I don't think we've seen great success from her out of Japan, but I do think, at least disregarding EBO4, because I don't think the EBO4 cards are going to be too big a change to what meta we saw in Japan. Definitely some new contenders, and we'll get onto them in a minute. But I think into these decks, your Emu matchup is bad. Your Emu matchup is still bad. But your Ace matchup, your Boa matchup, and your Mihawk matchup, I think they're all favoured for Bonnie. I think all three of these are very favoured. Having access to a bunch of frees, like the 10 cost Dofi, into Mihawk is brilliant. Lore Beppo, we've seen how good that card is now in Mihawk, and it's also very good in Bonnie. You also have the option of 9 cost Zoro if you do want to try and beat Emu matchup. You can combine a 9 cost Zoro with the Holy Jones or a DMG and try and go for game that way. The extra defense you have into Boa, with things like Carrots and the new 5 cost Perona, which we can pull that up. Perona, yeah, this Perona. And this Perona is really good in Mihawk as well, but in Bonnie, this is no slouch either. Being able to deny 2 things from resting and having a bit of sticking power into decks that would like to KO her, something like an Emu. You can deny their blockers from blocking, and then when they pop it with Mars, you can play something else. Brilliant. But again, into Boa, you can like give them triggers and not be too worried about it if you have this Perona as an option. Ace matchup's always been decent, so I don't have too much to say on Bonnie. I haven't played a lot of Bonnie yet. I will have a Bonnie video probably quite soon, because I do think she's sleeper in this format and underrated in the East for sure. I think the Emu matchup's still pretty bad, but all of these new decks, I don't think she has really any bad matchups. So now that's the top tier. Let's go over the rest of the OP14 leaders. Place those now. So Red Law, I don't think this deck is great. I'm going to put him in Rogue. We'll put Red Law in Rogue. This deck, when it draws well, is solid, but it feels like, to me at least, when I was playing this deck, it just doesn't draw well. Like, your curve is so strict. You've got to see Zoro on 7. You've got to see Law on 9, or another Zoro. If you're stuck playing, like, X-Drake again on 7, it feels really bad. And if you don't see X-Drake on 5, that also feels really bad, because then your shit gets removed into, like, Ace. Or you might even get popped into Boa. They might play the Rayleigh. Emu's obviously going to remove everything if you don't play that X-Drake. And even if you do have the X-Drake, the Emu matchup feels quite tricky to win anyway. I think in general, this guy's cards just aren't good enough. If you perfect curved every time, I think you'd be a solid deck. But the fact that this doesn't perfect curve every time, and I do have hope for him for the future, I think it will be easy to make this effect really good. I mean, being able to swap like an 8k power onto a 2k unit, like a searcher, he's really strong. It's just sometimes the pieces just don't quite come together. And I've been struggling to just consistently win with this deck. It just feels too inconsistent for me. And the power level, I just don't think it's high enough. Let's talk about one that I do think is better. I think Jinbei is a great deck. This deck, now that I've played the sort of tempo build with the Law and the Jozu, I think gives him a lot more versatility in how you want to approach the game. Being able to bounce your Arlong is actually really strong, because that guy just searches everything, so you're getting value over value. And the fact that you can turn everything into aggression is really nice. You have great matchups into decks like Mihawk that really need to get to that late game. You can pound just like a bunch of little weenies into them. Go, okay, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. Because Mihawk doesn't have a lot of draw. He has the cards he has, and he has big events. Those are great. But when they're just countering 5s, I mean, using a Drakili Cosm on a 5 doesn't feel great. You don't need me to tell you that. And then, unlike a deck like Rayleigh, who is also good. I think Rayleigh is also good in this format. But unlike Rayleigh, you actually have a top end. The big Jinbei is crazy. This big Jinbei, just bouncing a 7 and drawing 2 and being a 10-10 rush unit, that's mad, man. This lets you use your leader effect twice and just bounce so much. You can bounce Jozu, you can bounce pretty much anything into Boa, you can bounce Akuma by that point in the game, to deny his on-KO, which is cool. You can bounce Shanks into the big Mihawk deck. Obviously into Emu, and bouncing shit. Emu, I think, is the very dice roll dependent. Whoever goes second, I think, is very heavily favoured. Because obviously your removal doesn't work, but Aladdin combos are still very strong. And if you can get enough aggression, sort of all at once, to deny them a lot of value out of their blockers, it's great. But you do have to get them to 0 before 10 on. And you do have the potential for a lot of aggression at the end. If you can have like a Jinbei on the board, as you go into a 10 on turn, you go with a Pudding, you go with a Femur, you go with a bunch of pumps on your Jinbei, you can have a very good chance at killing them if you can get them to 0. But getting them to 0 is always the hardest thing. But I do think this is probably the best pure aggro deck. I wouldn't call Boa an aggro deck. She's more of like a, I don't know, like a tempo burn deck. Is that even a term? I don't know. But I think in terms of pure aggro, I do like Jinbei more than decks like Rayleigh or Bello Betty. And I do have a lot of hope for him in this format. Crocodile, I have slightly less hope for. I think the deck's still solid, and I think it is better than Nami. These tiers will be ordered as we go through, except maybe the bottom tier. I don't know about that one. But yeah, I think Crocodile is decent. He's very exploitable though. Like Red Rock is just brutal for this deck. And there's a lot of Red Rock decks. Jinbei can play Red Rock. Ace is definitely playing Red Rock. Boa absolutely can play Red Rock. And if your Croc gets Red Rocked, it feels really, really bad. I also think the Emu matchup is quite tough. Just because you don't have the tools to deal with their 10 costs. You're not killing them before they get there. You're not aggressive enough in any way. And, like, sure, you can sometimes arrest the ward, deny a couple of things from attacking, but they're still going to pound, like, 3 7s into you minimum, and you don't have the defense for that. Ground Death's great, but it's not, like, a master key that solves everything. You can definitely have a decent time into, like, Mihawk and Bonnie, but for me, these top 3 are all unfavourable, and that's enough to just leave him in solid, because I don't think he, like, stomps Mihawk. I think it's a kind of a close matchup. And a lot of decks, as we go through, great. I just don't think Crocodile is that crazy into either. But at a baseline, he's a good deck. This is a good deck with a solid package. It just feels like it's just not quite good enough. A lot of his cards are very, very fair. And a lot of these decks are much less fair. Speaking of a deck that is unfair, Doflamingo, I think, is a great deck. I think this is brilliant. Yes, he has his weaknesses. Ace in particular feels just like absolutely miserable to play into because you don't really have a good way of interacting with the Whitebeards. And their removal early on, particularly the Jozu, bouncing things like your Monet is really good. And if you then go with Virgo instead of Monet, they can't bounce the Virgo, but you're really low on Don, so that makes it quite difficult in the early game. Finding that balance before they get to their first 10 cost Whitebeard, I think is quite difficult. You're alright into Mihawk, and I think you are good into aggro decks like Jinbei. Boa is definitely playable. Boa is pretty playable. And the tricks you can do with this Dom -1, diverting into a big unit, diverting into Baby 5 to get a heal, diverting into Dellinger to just stop. I really like the early game plays where you play it like a Sugar and a Dellinger, and then you save the Sugar to get multiple searches with her. That's pretty cool. I do think this deck has a lot of potential. The 10 cost Dofi is crazy. Into Emu, if you can chain enough of those, you can just stun them out of the game. You can just stun them out of the game and make these big 10 costs that they can't do anything about whilst denying pretty much everything they have from attacking. That matchup feels playable. Hancock feels playable. Mihawk feels playable. I just think the Ace matchup is quite bad. And none of these matchups are, like, super favored. Like, I don't even know if Emu is favored. It's kind of close, but I think you have game into most of these decks other than Ace, which is good enough for great, I think. This deck's also really hard to play into. So, if you are a good Doflamingo player, you will gain percentage points on pretty much every matchup by just knowing the matchups. Because knowing when to attack what between things like Norina Beamsword, resting guys, the leader effect, of course, it can be quite difficult playing into Doflamingo, but he's also hard to play, so high skill caps all round. Who have we not ranked? Is it just Moria? It's just Moria. Or am I going to put Moria? I'm going to put him in solid. The first time I played this deck, I actually think it might be better than Nami right now. The first time I played this deck, I thought it was absolutely cheeks. I've watched a lot of Abster videos of him playing it. Check out Abster if you want to see Moria content. I still don't think the deck's great. Every time I play into it on the sim, I'm still just beating it fairly reliably most times. I think I've lost 1 or 2 games. I lost when I was playing a Red Law. I was playing Red Law into Moria, and like, yeah, I think he's better than Red Law. But when I've been playing these top decks, it just doesn't feel amazing. It still just doesn't feel amazing. It feels like you're very low on resources, and if your first life is not a trigger, it feels really bad. And that's one of my biggest issues with the deck. The deck does not feel consistent enough in the early game. Once you get to your late game and you've started looping like Absaloms and things, you can absolutely get Absalom, absolutely. You can be quite consistent at seeing your top end, like your 6-cost Moria, your 9-cost Boas later on, but in the early game, it just doesn't feel consistent enough at getting going. I was thinking your matchup into Emu is just terrible. Like, they just starve you and then throw a million 7s at you. You're not equipped to deal with this. The Emu is a very bad matchup in my experience, and Ace is not great either. I think Moria absolutely can be, maybe... I wouldn't be surprised to see a Moria top a regional. Probably Abster. Because I don't think anyone else is going to push this guy hard enough. Maybe Renee. I think Renee is a good player who's really hot on Moria as well. But I know he likes a few other leaders as well, so we'll see. But personally, I'm just leaving Moria in solid. I think it's a good deck. I just don't think it's a great deck. It's just a little bit too weak for me. And that's all of OP14, so let's clear that filter. And I guess I'll just scroll through and we'll talk about the decks that have sort of been buffed by EBO4, and we'll probably have more to discuss about some of them. Odin, I think, he's going to be decent with the new big Kikunojo. We can find that. This Kikunojo. I think this card's really strong. Heading you go to 7k as soon as you 7'd on turn feels really good in the early game. And I can see into especially decks like Boa, that being very good. Because, I mean, Boa has problems with Bluegill and Nami because, firstly, they're the healing, and we can't really do that. But the going to 7k is also very frustrating. So I think if you can go to 7k and sort of chain that, seems good. But chaining that, I think, is going to be easier said than done, because you've got to find multiple Kikus. And we have some searches, but you still got to find them. And that means you're not doing anything else too crazy. So I still think you're going to have issues. This deck is not great. You're still very, very weak to removal. Like, incredibly weak to removal. But the Kiku's a nice addition. I just don't think it's going to change all too much, to be honest. I'm not talking about you. I'll talk about you. I think Luffy, now that he's gained access to the new Luffy, the green one from OP14. Oh my god. So many Luffys. This one. I think this Luffy will make your Emu matchup a lot more playable, which was probably the worst matchup for this deck. Mars just blew up all your shit, and it was like, I don't really want you to. Having this Luffy as a protection option, specifically for your Sanji and Pudding, is very important. We've also gained a few new things in the last couple of sets. There was the Film Sanji, who was pretty good. Let's see, yeah, this Film Sanji is pretty strong. The Film Luffy as well. And in OP14, we've also gained this Nami. And this is obviously intended for RG Luffy, who we'll talk about fairly soon. But this is also very playable in GP. The baseline It's basically a DMG into anything that's not called Portgasty Ace, and then gives you so much Don at the end of your turn for you to use for Barguas, this event that you sometimes see as well. Obviously, Gum Gum Giant, whatever events you want to counter with, it gives you just so... You're threatening so many counter events after you play this, and it's a blocker, which I think GP's gained a bunch of new additions. I would not be surprised to see him do quite well now that he has removal protection. Although you will be quite reliant on seeing this early on, I think. VV can go in the EBO3 waiting room. I don't think the old VV is worth considering. I know that some of the Alabaster cards are in EBO4, like in our half, but I just don't think the old VV is worth. She's just not very good. Red Zoro, you're too out of date. I have seen, I was watching the Chinoise Cup. When was it? I don't know, it was a few days ago. I was watching the Chinoise Cup, and Skepass was playing RG Law. Do you know what? It looked like Giga Brain hard, but he was getting some results, and I know Skepass is like, he's one of the best players in Europe for sure. I think if you invest the time into this deck, the new Supernova, some of the new Supernova stuff is actually quite good. Let's go set OP14. Specifically the X-Drake. The X-Drake, when you combine it with Restand Law to reuse this when attacking, you get insane board clear, and you've also gained the Luffy Searcher. The Searcher event, if you want to run that. But particularly this Luffy Searcher and the X-Drake are both really nice new tools for this deck. But personally, I think some of the aspects of the format, like the Life Burn, may well be quite tricky, because obviously you don't have healing, and all the good decks in the format have unblockable, which could be quite tricky. You'd probably have to look to try and aggro Boa down before she can burn you. Emu, I can still see being quite difficult. Like, your X-Drake giving your stuff protection is brilliant. It's going to be really nice for establishing your early game, but it doesn't really help you when it comes to Nuss. And late game, they're just going to kill you in like 1 to 2 turns. So you've got to be incredibly aggressive and draw quite well in that matchup, I feel. It's also just incredible. Like, this deck is notorious for being really, really difficult. You're going to need to put in hundreds of hours into this, just into this leader alone, to be like topping a regional with this. But if you're Skepass or one of the other very dedicated RG Law mains, maybe we'll see RG Law top a regional. I would love to see that. And don't overlook like some of the support. He's gained some pretty good stuff. Nothing else from OP1 is worth really mentioning. I guess we could put Dofi in local legend if you like. He's not really gained anything. The deck's fine. The deck's fine. Maybe into Boa you're pretty reasonable because you have a lot of removal. You can go like 4-cost Law, bounce their shit, and aggro them down. But I think your Ace matchup's still going to be tough. Your Emu matchup's still going to be pretty tough. You might be alright into Mihawk. I just don't think the power level on the cards is there anymore. He needs Jinbei back. Release 4-cost Jinbei, man. Free that card. These are terrible Animal Kingdom Pirates leaders. I read this card again recently when I was checking out, was he related to the EBO4 cards? What were they thinking? Was this ever good? If you played an OPO1 and King was good, let me know in the comments, because I don't believe it. If Vankov can go in local legend, it could probably go below these two, though. The new 8-cost Shiryu is great. I guess I could put them up while we're talking. Yeah, the new 8-cost Shiryu is great, and the Hannibal, the 5-cost Hannibal, is strong too. But the deck is so high roll reliant on seeing your early game and then your late game, and then not bricking off the draw for random cards. And you do need to change Shiryu, and you also need to just dodge certain matchups. Emu is just completely unwinnable. Like, what are we doing into Emu? Can't bounce anything. I also think Doflamingo is probably pretty tough because they can either remove your Shiryu, and then it's like, okay, I'll remove your Doflamingo, and then you remove me straight back. Well, what are we doing here? Or they can just stun all your other stuff and divert like the Shiryu's attack into something. So I think Dofi would be pretty hard. And in the aggro deck, you're just going to aggro down. It's not good, but it's decent, and it's a funny meme deck. If you can high roll the Vankov, you can get some stuff done. Just not enough to be any harder than local legend, I'm afraid. Kuro's crap. This deck is crap. I'm only putting it on here because it did gain the 7-cost Kuro. I'm not going to pull that card up. I can't be bothered. But this deck's terrible. I've tried to make it work. just feels really bad. Like, the fact that your payoff is still just playing Krieg, like, man. Enough said. Enough said. I'll mention this guy. I think GP Dofi's not the worst now. I'd definitely put him above these. The new Purple Doflamingo Don Quixote Pirates cards are pretty compelling. The Virgo in particular, giving you actual, like, answers to removal is great. The fact that you have two tap searches will make you pretty annoying, but you're nowhere near as good as this, right? Your payoff in the Big 10 Dofi is great, but this is just so much. This leader effect is so much better than restanding 2 Doms. Being able to nullify any attack for free is, and having the extra life and the interaction this gives you with like the Baby 5, the Sugar, the Dellinger. GP Dofi doesn't really get any of that. I guess maybe you could do something with like the bird cage and popping the Baby 5s and the Sugars to sort of cheat past the bird cage. Maybe that could be kind of cool. Maybe we'll do a fun video on Green Purple Dofi sometime, but yeah, I don't think he's any better than a local legend, but not too bad. Gained a few new things, quite interesting. Purple Yellow Croc, I actually think is probably near the top of Rogue. The Boa and the You'll Frighten Me event are both great in this deck. Combining those with a Karma Way. I mean, I did a video on this guy. If you want to see some my more thoughts on Purple Yellow Croc and some gameplay, check out that video. That was pretty fun. I think this deck is one of the most fun decks in the game. The power level's just not quite there, and Emu also feels very bad. I don't think the Emu matchup is great at all. Once we get the EBO3 Robin, I'm excited to retry this, because that's a very funny combo. The diverting with a come away into the Robin to kill your opponent, pretty funny. Is he that good though? I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised to see him top a regional, but I would also just not be surprised if he doesn't. Bello Betty, I have no experience with this deck in this meta, but it's always worth putting on the tier list. I'm going to put him about here. It's just big aggro. Sometimes that you just get to go second, you draw your God Curve, and you kill everyone on like turn 4. Especially into multicolor leaders like Hangok especially. I could see you just killing her like immediately. In some of these slower decks though, like Bonnie, it's quite difficult. And if you also just either don't get your God Curve or like lose dice in certain matchups, this deck can be not great. But the fall off of Green Zoro has got to be good for Betty. That's got to be good. Sakazuki, I want to put him in great. You know I love this guy, but I just don't think I can. I think he's solid. I'll put him above these though. I think the deck's generally not that bad. Like, yes, you lose to Emu. When we get to him, your Blue-Purple Luffy matchup is bad as well. I think it's everything else. You're not that bad. You don't really have that many bad matchups. The little removal like Broke is great into things like Jinbei. The fact that we have blue removal, Hand Blaze and such is pretty good into Boa. Although we don't have Iska yet, do we? Okay, we don't have Iska. I'll put him a lot lower. Yeah, I forgot about that. When I was playing... when I was playing Sakazuki, I was playing with this Iska from EBO3. We don't have this card yet, do we? Yeah, without this, it's a lot worse. Yeah, in fact, I might even put him in Rogue. Yeah, I think once we get this card, I'll put him towards the top of Solid. But without Iska, I think he is a good bit weaker. Like, Jozu's no replacement for this card. This card is bonkers. Blocker? 1k? Searchable? Bomber 4? What a treat. I'm really hyped for Sakazuki's comeback, man. But yeah, I forgot about Iska. He should definitely be more like here. Just for power level and consistency reasons. Where else? I guess it would feel weird to not put Purple Luffy and Anel on the tier list. I don't think any of them really gained anything. I guess I'd put Purple Luffy about here and Anel, I don't know, probably below these. Like, I don't see a reason to play this deck anymore. You still just hard lose to Emu. You don't have an answer to Whitebeards into Ace. And like, I can see you losing to Boa's Burn as well. I can see that happening. You're gonna lose value, certainly. I don't know. I just think he's a bit outdated. We need Sky Island support. OP14. Save an L. Maybe don't. And Purple Luffy. I'm interested to try a Purple Doflamingo Don Quixote Pirates build. But I do think it's just going to be worse than Purple Dofi. Your leader effect is fine in ramping, but you lose access to so many cards. The 4-cost Baby 5, the 5-cost Monet, the 4-cost Sugar, and the Dellinger. You don't have any of those. You have so much less defense. But you can probably still make the Emu matchup pretty good. Maybe you can aggro down Boa fast enough. I don't know. Ace just felt unplayable. That's not going to have changed. No, I'm leaving him in Rogue. I don't think this deck was great last format. It was one of the more playable decks purely because it beat Emu. But it always lost to Ace. That's not going to have changed. And I don't think these new matchups, certainly Jinbei's not going to be good. You've never enjoyed playing into aggro. And I think Purple Dofi is just going to make better use of the Purple Don Quixote engine than Purple Luffy, personally. But we'll see. I'd love to see him succeed. I love this deck. Yamato, I'll give a small nod that we are waiting for some cards in Yamato. The new 5-cost Yamato, I guess we can pull up. This one. This card's very strong. The on-play and the on-KO. What more do I need to say? This card's really good, but it's an EBO 3 card, so until then, I don't see any reason to play Yamato. Reiju's always alright. Portia Chiji's just pretty good at baseline. I'll probably put her above... Redlaw. I think it's better aggro. It's more consistent, because you've got the stage, you've got a Searcher now, and you're much harder to take out. Ichiji is kind of just like the Red Zoro, but better, because you play it for, 3 Don, alongside a Porsche. And it draws a bunch of cards, and you have access to Red Rock as well, if you really want to deal with stuff from Ace. That could be pretty good. Maybe I'll give her a little bit more credit. Yeah, I'll put Reiju at the top of Rogue. I think Reiju can actually be pretty decent. Yeah, having Red Rock to deal with Ace, just big Ichijis to try and deal with Emu. You even have Black Bug. That bot decks, right? I believe Black Bug bot decks, but you also have Top Knot for getting rid of Boa stuff efficiently. And you're not too worried about the burn. As long as they're not burning your board, which they're not. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Reiju could be pretty good this format. She's always at least playable. We've talked about Bonnie. Foxy's gained some new stuff, hasn't he? How good do we think Foxy is? I think I'm going to put Foxy in Rogue. I've played into a couple on the sim. It feels okay. The fact that you're still fairly weak to removal is also not ideal. You have the pickles, but that only protects from KO. So Jozu's an Ace, Red Rock's on your big guy. Your shit's gone. Into Emu, I feel like that matchup's still going to be pretty unplayable. You stun their leader, you stun the Nuss. But they're going to be able to clear your board very efficiently. And you're just going to die. You're just going to die when they start swinging a bunch of 7s. I think Mihawk could also be quite difficult because he can interact with your board. So he can get rid of the Itamizu's to try and deny you from having the requisite amount of Foxy Pirates on board. But it's undoubtable that the new A-Cost Foxy and the Searcher are both really good additions. And I think the Groggy Monsters is alright as well. I think all 3 of those new cards are great for Foxy. I'm just not convinced it's going to push him too far up this leaderboard. But I'd be happy to be proven wrong. This deck's not a bad deck at all. Having searchable access to slow beam sword alone that's a major boon. Who else? Vegapunk's not really gained anything, but he's not bad either. I'll just put him in local legend. I don't have a lot to say on Vegapunk in this format. He felt right last set, but not great. Okay, Carrot and King. Let's talk about Carrot first. And this might be a hot take. I think this deck's just okay. I think this deck is just okay. I will put her probably above Crocodile. Yeah, I think I'll put her just above Crocodile. And obviously this is limited testing, because this is only on the dev sim. I've not had a great chance to test into Carrot, but I've played a handful of games as Carrot, and I've played a handful into her. It feels like when this deck God curves, it's probably up here. I think it can absolutely compete with the best decks when you God curve. But this is one of the least consistent decks, I swear. You have one Searcher, you really rely on seeing stage, and your stage is unsearchable other than with the 1-cost Carrot that searches specifically for the stage. And yeah, that's a 2k and it's searchable 2k, so it's not the worst thing to play out, but in the games where you go, okay, a 1-drop into your stage, into 5-cost Carrot, into 5-cost Carrot, into 8-drop Carrot, Lorpo, this deck feels godly. In the games where you just don't see a Mink early on, you don't see stage, so your board gets taken out, it feels like putting the Infinity Stones together to get this deck to work. But when it works, my god, it's good. I think if we got one more Searcher, and maybe when that 6-cost Carrot comes out, it'll increase the consistency just inherently, because you'll have another good thing to do. It'll make the deck better, but for now, I'm just putting her in solid. I think the deck can absolutely compete with most of these decks up here. All the new cards are great. The Acos Carrot, the Eliclaw. Mistoms, I'm not so sure on. I'm not so sure on Mistoms, but at least the Eliclaw and the Acos Carrot are very, very good. I'm just not sure the deck's going to be consistent enough to be in these top tiers, personally. King is bad. I've had a load of people asking me to make a King video. I'll probably try him at some point, but this leader effect is not good. Like, Dom -2 to draw 1 is just not very good, and giving something -2 is just not very relevant at the minute. He did gain the new stuff that Kaido gained, and I'll talk about Kaido later, but having 4 life and having a far worse leader effect, it's just not worth the upsides of having, like, you got the Queen Searcher, the 1-cost Queen Searcher, and I know you can draw a card sometimes. I just don't think this deck is very good at all, but if you have a list that's been working for you, let me know in the comments, because this leader, it's always been like, yo, this guy looks fun, but just not very good. I'm going to put Kalgara on here. Kalgara Believer. I don't have much to say on him. He's just a decent aggro deck. I don't think he's anything too crazy, but it's worth at least local legends. Lim as well. I think Lim, I'll put her right at the bottom of Rogue. I thought Lim would be a lot better last format. She wasn't. She really wasn't. And I think the stun from decks like Mihawk and Doflamingo is going to be very difficult to deal with. The fact that you're top end in a 9 Zoro just gets stunned by 9 Mihawk and they're like, okay, nice play, bro, is tough. And into Boa, you're going to have a tough time as well. Because like, they're pretty aggressive at killing you, but you also can't play board because then you just die from her leader effects. And Lim does not have a ton of resources. So, personally, I'm putting Lim in Rogue. Maybe she could be a little bit higher up in Rogue, but I don't know. Without testing her, I just don't think there's that much reason to play Lim anymore. Blackbeard, I'll put in Rogue as well. Blackbeard's always decent. I'll put him with, like, Purple Luffy. This deck's always okay, but I think you're going to have a hard time into Hancock. Your Emu matchup is bad. Ace isn't super free either. And Mihawk doesn't have tons of on-play, so that would maybe be quite difficult. They stop, like, your Burgess from attacking. Rest a bunch of your stuff. Stopping, like, Van Auger from resting him with just, like, Perona. That's kind of rude. And then he has 1,000 copies of DMG to rest your Blackbeards at the end of the game. Yeah, I think I've convinced myself Blackbeard's probably Rogue this set, but you never know. I wouldn't be surprised to see a Blackbeard top. He can always just high roll some really good matchups and win that way. Smoker, I've been seeing a little bit of hype about the Supernova Smoker build. I'll put him here with these other red decks. The Supernova Smoker build, where you play 8-cost Kid, and then you put the 5-cost X-Ray behind it, and it's like, haha, you can't remove the Kid. Incredible. And that's cool. That's cool, but into, like, decks that can power down, and I mean, Ace is now playing, like, Round Table and ASL. Doflamingo's got the Virgo to do a bit of power down. Mihawk can also just deny the kid from resting, so then you've got to have multiple kids. It can become a little bit difficult. I think the deck's interesting, and I do want to try it, and I'll probably have a video on it at some point. But my early thought is just it's probably not good enough. Sugar, EBO3 Waiting Room. She gained access to the new Don Quixote Pirates cards in this set, but I think until you get the new 3-cost Sugar and 5-cost Monet in EBO3, I don't think there's much reason to play this over Purple Dofi. Yellow Kid, you can go on the tier list. You can go next to an L. And I'm actually going to skip ahead a bit. I'm going to grab Yellow Bonnie as well and put her in there too. All these yellow decks can go together. Yellow Bonnie's probably the best of the three. This is just Thriller Slop. I hate the Thriller Bark package. In Moria, I think it's actually kind of cool because you got the interaction where you go, okay, KO the Absalom, do a search, KO the Hogback, turn it into the Perona, KO the Perona to stun a couple things. I think it's cool. In these other decks, like you see Thriller Bark Bonnie, Thriller Bark Yellow Luffy, Thriller Bark Robin. It's just slop. It's not. These cards aren't good. Like, they're not great in Moria, but you get so much more value out of them because of your leader effect to kill things. And the fact that you have so many more triggers in that deck. I just don't think the Thriller Bark stuff's very good. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, and that is probably the best way to play Bonnie at the minute. which is kind of sad. I don't like Thriller Slop. Fuck Thriller Slop. Thriller Slop. Get it out of here. But yeah, the Bonnie and Kid are probably both alright. They're just decent yellow decks. Neither have really gained too much this set. Hopping back, I'll put Jinbei in local legends. He's getting the new 7-cost Jinbei, which is okay. This guy, it's fine. I don't think this is game changing. It doesn't even have a counter, which is honestly, I feel like he should be at 1k. It's nice that you can restand it. So you have like a mini Katakuri for the deck, but I'm not convinced. I think the better fish type leader is Shirahoshi. I still think she's probably just rogue. The deck's probably the best it's been in a long time. The new Sea Kings are generally quite threatening, but into decks that can stun your board, like 10 cost purple Dofi is an absolute terror. See, you basically have to have the 2-cost Shirahoshi in most matchups so that you can have a board that's actually defensible and get the most value out of your blocker guy, and also not die to removal. So your leader can't attack, your 2-cost Shirahoshi can't attack, so you've got 4 slots on the board. It's so hard just having enough guys to deal with decks that stun, like Bonnie, Mihawk, and Dofi, that as much as I really love this deck and I think she's a lot of fun, I don't know. I think the 2-cost Shirahoshi should have been a stage. I think it was Nightingale, Ben, when I was playing with him, he suggested that. Is that right? I think that's right. He suggested that, and it was like, yeah, it should be a stage. It should be a stage. Then at least you get to have a board, but as a character, it's very interactable. And also just fills up a slot, so I don't think she's that great, but she's definitely playable. The most playable she's ever been. And I will be bringing her to League at least once. UP Luffy's great. This deck has finally gained Roger. You can play into Emu. You're not great into Emu. I think that's still probably the most difficult matchup for this deck. But you're really solid into Ace because you have great access to Red Rock. I think your Mihawk matchup, at least personally, feels fairly good. The 5-cost Shishigi is sort of a game changer, but for Mihawk to Perfect Curve, he's not going to do that every time. And the additions that we've gained, the Otama, as well as bringing back in It's to Die For, make your ramp just so much easier. And the Roger gives you so much defense into, like, Boa. Boa, certainly still losable. They can burn you down, then go, okay, Pudding, have you got it? And a lot of the time, after Pudding, you won't have it. But if you can sort of defense up and play smart, starve them out for a bit, you can absolutely beat Boa. It's just easier said than done. I don't think this guy's going to be anywhere near as good as he was back in his heyday in OP11, but still very, very solid. Gum Gum Giant plus Roger is just insane. You go to 12 for 0 cards. Wow. Who else? We discussed Nami. Yeah, it is EBO3. Once we get EBO3, I think Nami probably moves up to Great. I don't know where in Great, but I think she definitely moves up. And that'll probably drag Boa down a little bit as well. Rayleigh. I think he's really decent. I'm going to put him certainly better. I think he's better than Betty. I think Jinbei might just be better Rayleigh. Having access to blue cards to remove like Boa's stuff is going to be solid. And also having access to Red Rock just to deal with big guys is great. And the 10-cost Jinbei is also, you have a boss monster. The downsides of playing Jinbei over Rayleigh has incredible defense. Like, the amount of 2Ks this deck has and Conqueror's Haki is just ridiculous. Whereas Jinbei, once he's dead, he's dead. You don't have a lot of counter. You really don't. Deck plays like 8 2Ks, 8 to 10 2Ks. Whereas Rayleigh plays like 15. So if you want an aggro deck with more defense, definitely recommend Rayleigh. If you want more aggression and also like way better removal, I recommend Jinbei. I think broadly I prefer Jinbei, but Rayleigh's going to be no slouch. If you are a Rayleigh aficionado, you can definitely perform well in this format. Zoro's fallen off. I don't fully understand why. Like, I get the Mihawk matchup's tough because he goes to 8k with the Lawpo, right? Which means that even if you are restanding, your swings are so bad. And Boa's also reasonably difficult because the healing combined with burn is not great. 6-cost Rayleigh can also just destroy Tashigi, which is very value efficient, can I say? That's kind of mad. Emu and Ace matchups haven't really changed. Emu has a bunch more counter, which ain't great, but you can absolutely still win if you go second in God Curve. Ace, I think, is still slightly favored for Zoro, but there's not a lot in it. Dofi's felt like a very weird matchup. They can be very tricky with when they use their leader effect, and the Baby 5 is also very annoying because it can give them healing, and you've always kind of suffered into healing. But I think this deck's probably better than people are giving it credit for. I just think people aren't playing a lot of Zoro. Maybe they're just writing it off because of the Mihawk matchup being quite difficult, but I don't think he's that bad. I'm going to give him a fairly high and solid. I think this deck's still good. If you still like Zoro, I don't think you need to stop playing him. It's just a little bit weaker now that there are more decks in the meta. Kuzan's getting some new stuff. I'm going to put him in here. I'm going to put him about here. The new Isho, I guess we'll pull up the new cards, right? The new Isho is really strong if you can get it down like on curve. This just feels nuts. Forcing your opponent to bot deck too, and they bot deck, so even decks that gain value from having things in the trash like Emu, well, they don't even get that. And then this when attacking is like so free. Every turn getting to give minus 2,000 power to something and getting a cycle into decks like Mihawk that want their guys to be tapped. It just makes it so easy to clear. And this can be true into like kid decks. If you're playing against a Bonnie and they play down an 8-cost kid. Nice fucking kid, dude. I've got an Isho and it's 6,000 power. Incredible. Also getting the Bluegrass, which is a nice little play. Playing this out on 4, I mean, it's just better Cavendish, right? Because it's searchable and you bottom a 1 for free, I guess. This can come up into like Jinbei or Doflamingo. Both of these decks actually play a fair amount of 1 costs. And you know, these top decks don't play an insignificant amount of them as well. So bottoming a 1, not insignificant, but generally this is just searchable Cavendish, and that makes it great. Also have Ice Time, which can stop things from attacking. You can combine this with Isho's power down to hit 12Ks into Ace if you really want to. And this does help a bit into pretty much any deck. There's not many decks that are playing like tons of huge guys, and between this and your counter event, it makes it quite easy to sort of limit your opponent's aggression at the end of the game. But this isn't only end of the game card. On curve, this is rubbish because you need to develop your own stuff. You sort of need to have 1 to 2 Garp combos down already, and getting there without dying can be quite difficult. So whilst you cycle a lot, this deck also plays an ungodly amount of bricks, and sometimes they just come together, especially into aggro matchups like Jinbei. I found it quite difficult to play this deck, but in some of the slower decks where you get to use your red rocks, you get to get value out of the Isho, and especially his when attacking, it's not bad. It's a lot better than it was, and it could even maybe be slightly higher once I've had a little bit more time to test these new cards. But for now, he feels at least pretty good. Not too many more. I don't have a lot to say on Sanji, but I do think Sanji is going to be very solid. I'd probably put him about here. Having searchable red rock is great, but until we get that Reiju, the 5-cost Reiju from EBO3, the full power of this deck is not going to be unlocked. Once we get that card, that Reiju, I think, honestly, this could be a great deck. You've kind of got everything now. The Stealth Black is brilliant for having very cheap access to either resummon your Sanji if they invest a lot into killing it, or you can use Birth Burst to just draw a bunch of cards. This deck kind of has everything, and the new Searcher event that trashes a bunch of cards as well just speeds up your gameplay. Your gameplay is so fast, and it's a big counter event. I think everything they've given this guy is good, even as unblockable now in Terracotta. Everything they've given this guy is good. I think the main things holding him back are the stun decks, so like your Mihawk and your Bonnie, where your Sanjis don't get very much value. They get like Carrot locked, or 9-cost Mihawk locked, or whatever, and then it can be quite hard to close the game out. And I haven't tested Sanji vs Emu with the new stuff, but I feel like it's got to be terrible still. Like, you're a removal deck at heart. You can play those 3-cost Sanjis, but then they get nussed. And once Emu gets to 10, they're just going to kill you. Like, you've got a lot of defense in Gum Gum Giants, but you don't have unlimited defense. So I feel like the Emu matchup's probably still pretty tough, but could be wrong on that one. Let me know if you are a Sanji main. I do think he's going to be at least solid, though. Would not be surprised to see this guy top, and it might even be better than Croc, actually. I don't know. I'll put him there because I'm not too sure just yet, but would not be surprised to see this do well, and even better once we get EBO3. Rosie, I think, is still somewhat EBO3 waiting room. Where would I put him? I'd probably put him down here somewhere. go about here. The deck definitely still feels quite flimsy. I've been playing into a few today, though, and the combo with the new Rush Rosie that heals into playing out really the purple 7-cost Rosie is great. The new Law and Rosinante, the 6-cost, is really good for the deck. It gives you just like the God curve on evens, where you go the promo Law into the Law and Rosie on 3 and 5, which is just crazy. The fact that that's an 8k blocker that draws 1 and ramps back is truly nuts. This deck has a lot of defense, but you don't have a lot of resources. And whilst the Law and Rosie helps, I don't think it helps enough. You're also really upset about seeing removal that is not KO. The fact that this leader effect only works for KO and not like KO'd or removed by an effect is quite sad. It's like Josu's pretty... You don't like seeing Josu, you don't like seeing 4-cost Law, you don't like seeing like Atmos. Red Rock as well on your big guys is not great. I think once we get the EBO3 Rosie, maybe he'd be in solid, but for now I'm going to leave him in rogue. But that's better than you got last set, so one time to be alive. Koala's waiting for the new 4-cost Koala. There's very little reason to play this deck at the minute, in my opinion. RG Luffy, though, has gained some great new stuff. The new... in fact, I'll put him here. The new Nami that gives you 5 Doms back is crazy. That's ridiculous. It makes your aggro matchups just so powerful. Because you've got a blocker and you've got 10k counter for 4 Dom. Incredible. If you can stack a 9-cost Zoro and let it live and then put that behind it, that's going to be great. But without the 3-cost Robin promo, getting that 9-cost Zoro to stick is very difficult. Because there's a lot of red rocks around. And even just Mihawk can just say, okay, it can't attack. It's frozen with Lord Beppo. And and that stops a lot of your aggression. You can actually restand it if they just freeze it with Lord Beppo. But 9-cost Mihawk in particular is very bad. You don't want to see that. Also, Emu still sucks. You can still beat that matchup, but you're very 9-cost Zoro reliant still. And I don't love it. I think his power level is really high now. It just works out that some of the matchups are quite difficult to deal with. Like, I think you're good into Boa. I think you're good into Jinbei. I think you're fairly playable into Bonnie as well. But Mihawk, if they can deny that 9 Zoro, can be very difficult to deal with. And the Emu as well is probably this deck's worst matchup, I think, still. Probably. Yeah, I think Ace is more playable now, but we don't have the Robin promo. I've convinced myself I'm just going to put this in solid, given that we don't have the Robin promo. Because the 3-cost Luffy is a lot worse into all these other decks that aren't called Emu. But once we get that Robin promo, I do think he'll be in great. If we get that Robin promo. Roger, nothing's really changed for Roger, but I think he's still good. Being big leader is good into go wide deck. Being big leader is good into Emu when you high roll. But the deck's still inconsistent as shit. Like, it's got the same problem for me as Carrot. And you've got one searcher, and you're really just reliant on drawing things, because you don't have a lot of draw. You got Gaban for draw 2 trash 1 sometimes. What a time to be alive. One that I do have more hope for is Sabo. I'm going to put Sabo here. It'd be even better once we get that new 4-cost Koala, but now that we have the Sabo promo, I think Stussy does a lot of work in this format. Getting rid of all of Mihawk's top end, getting rid of all of Ace's top end, and even getting rid of Dofi's top end if they haven't managed to stick a Virgo is good. Having 1,000 blockers is brilliant into Boa, and just being a big leader is also solid in that matchup too. Your Emu matchup is still going to be bad, but your Ace matchup was always good. And your Bonnie, I don't know the Bonnie matchup, but Stussy's got to be pretty good, right? Stussy's got to be pretty good. I feel like Sabo could be a bit sleep at this format. Maybe I'll put him above Dofi. I don't know, I'm not convinced on the placings of these decks just yet. But I think Sabo actually not that bad this format. I think he could have something to say. Just less Emu is always great for this deck, because you didn't like Emu. What else have we got? We've talked about Bonnie. Is that it? That might be it. Oh, we've got Solid X. Ah, yes, this guy. This guy. I'm going to put him in Solid. I'm going to put him top of Solid. Early impressions from the deck. The new cards are insane. All of them. The King, the Kaido, I'll pull them up, I guess. All 4 of these new cards are insane. The King and the Kaido making your 10-cost Kaido a one-sided board wipe is great. King giving you just perfect ramp every single turn is bonkers. This Queen giving you consistency. The Kaido letting you play board or just rest blockers. and then this event just being like the perfect closer, as well as effectively a blast breath, because your opponent can't attack these. Like, what are they going to do? Okay, I'll return one Don. GG's. So what's the problems with this deck? If you don't see King, it feels a lot worse. If you whiff Ramp on 3, which is less, like, that's less of a problem now, because we have Queen as well as Island. But it still feels bad when you do whiff Ramp. If you don't see King, it feels bad. And if they can remove your King with, like, a Jozu, that also feels bad. And there's nothing you can do about that. We don't have universal protection in purple. So I do think this deck has some level of issues with just the curve being very, very strict. But when you get that curve, trashing life is insane. Like, Boa doesn't get triggers. It actually gives you game into Emu. And the one-sided board wipes into decks that can't deal with them, either because they don't have anti-protection or anti-removal like Ace, or if you can deal with your opponent's Tashigi, for example, in Bonnie, one-sided board wipe is broken. It is broken. It's just not consistently happening because of the amount of removal protection right now. However, I think the new cards combined with this lead effect actually just being pretty good. Give me enough hope to put him top of solid. I really hope this deck does something. It's so fun. It's so fun. If you haven't played Kaido, get on the dev build, give him a few games, or just wait till the regular build comes out. This is really fun, leader. Is that all the decks? I think there are a couple more right at the bottom. No, go to this. Yellow, Little Luffy. We've got Zonji. I'll do Zonji first. I don't have anything really to say on Zonji. It was fine last set. I think it will still be fine at this set. I'd probably put him here. I think you're going to struggle into the stuff where they stop you from resting, like Mihawk with the Perona, Bonnie again with the Perona. Ace was always a really miserable matchup, and that's not really gone anywhere. Boa can just, like, pudding you and burn your life down, which ain't great. And I can see you struggling into maybe, like, Jinbei can aggro you down. This Dofi can just stun your board. So I'm not sure this is going to be a great deck, this format, but it's definitely worthy of at least Rogue. RP Kids gained some new stuff, huh? I'm not a believer. Are you a believer? If you're a believer in the new RP Kid support, let me know. I don't think the new cards are that impactful. It's mainly the Kid, right? The 7-cost Kid. Is that the only one? Oh no, there was the Killer, the Kamazo as well. I don't think either of them are changing the game for Kid. They're just going to make him a little bit better. The deck's not bad. It's just not that powerful. He needs, like, a lot of new cards. I don't really want to talk about any of the new starter decks. Just Yellow Luffy. I think this is EBO3 waiting room. And that might be quite boring, I guess. But I've tried this deck without the Nami and the Robin. It just doesn't feel... I don't know. I don't get why you would choose to play this leader without the Nami and the Robin. Why would you not just play, like, Bonnie or even Enel? He doesn't have... Like, the cards in the deck are okay. The Sanji feels good. The Zoro doesn't feel great. Because a lot of the time, the character is just going to be either too big to attack, or it's not going to be rested on curve. And then you're dropping him later, when you could just drop Kid, or like Akuma. I don't know, the deck just doesn't feel that powerful. The 6 life is good, and he's not bad. If I was to rank him, I'd probably just put him with these other yellow decks in Rogue, to be honest. I don't think this deck's that good without the Nami or the Robin. Once we get the Nami and the Robin, I think he's probably at least bottom of solid. I don't think he's shit, like some people were saying. Is that everyone? I think that's everyone. I've been talking for way too long. I need to go and get another drink, because my drink has run out. Drinks of the day. What a time to be alive. But yeah, this is my early initial thoughts tier list. Quite nicely makes a top 10, huh? That's quite nice. Top 10 decks in OP14. Yeah, shout out to Kari Kizoku for the use of his tier list maker. This is really good. The fact that you just hover over the card and it brings it up big is brilliant. I should probably subscribe to his Patreon soon, really, shouldn't I? But either way, thank you to Mr. Kaizoku for the tier list maker. Let me know where I'm wrong. Let me know where I'm right. I hope I explained my thoughts somewhat well. And this is just initial thoughts. I've not had time to test a lot of these decks. A lot of this is intuition and a few games I've played into them and how they felt to play into. But this is what I'm going with at the minute. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a lovely rest of your day.